Popovich is making it clear he's evaluating talent. Let's put Julian on the hot seat.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs. We're here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Kings 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you back. Hope everybody's having a great work week and hanging in there halfway through. Hey, this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get on your way to being your best self. So what are we talking about today? Well, Popovich has been saying they're evaluating talent ahead of next season. Who's going to stay, who's going to go, who's looking for an NBA job. And we're going to put the first person on that hot seat. He is Julian Champagnie. Has he done enough to earn himself a spot on the San Antonio roster, or he's likely going to be Austin bound? And also a salute to LaMarcus Aldridge. He recently announced his retirement. We'll look back at his career, and at least some fans are saying that his jersey, Spurs jersey, should be retired, which is weird because that's the same Bruce Bowen's number. So double jersey retirement, who knows? We'll dive into that and much, much more. And making his way back here after a long time away, that pains me. He is James Pledger with San Antonio Sports Star. Follow him on Twitter at @IamPledger. He is co-host of the Saturday Morning Hangover. James, we missed you here at Locked On Spurs.
I know, man, but I feel honored. I'm here for the Champagnie talk, so let's do this.
Yeah, exactly. We're popping Champagnie on champagne for you as you make your return here at Locked On Spurs. James is a very busy person. He's moving up at the San Antonio Sports Star, so we got him. We got him here. We're going to make the best of it right here on Locked On Spurs. Pleasure. So Popovich is making it very clear pre and post game in the last month or so that they are evaluating talent. Who's going to stay, who's going to go, who's going to earn themselves an NBA job moving forward. This team is in full rebuild mode. That's part of it. And there's one person who could be or could not be in a Spurs San Antonio uniform, that's Julian Champagnie. Great shooter, young kid, very humble, but he's definitely a bubble player. James, your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, he's a bubble player. I mean, this whole year has been about player development and kind of what the future may hold. Bassie was one of those players. We saw him get rewarded with a contract. We know, Keldon and Devin and Malachi and Blake and Jeremy, like it's all been about, evaluation and development with a lot of these guys and figuring out who is what to this roster. And Julian is just kind of one of those guys that near the end of the roster, a lot like Bassie when he first came on. Is there something there? And they're trying to figure that out. But he has played admirably in his time, especially over the last 10 games, averaging almost 10 points a game. So it's not like it's been a complete, this is a guy that belongs in the G League. Like, he's done some things that have at least caught your attention at 6'7".
I think the one thing that's caught everybody's attention, his ability to shoot. This guy can get hot. I mean, quick, and can knock down the three shot, which is very important for the Spurs, and just surviving in the NBA. I mean, now Big's got to hit those threes just to stay on a roster. He can do that. He's like instant offense. His defense is suspect, but then again, the NBA, does they even play defense nowadays? I mean, look at the scores this season. I mean, dropping 50 points a game for a player is like the norm now. So I think that's his biggest commodity he can bring in this rebuild, is Julian's ability to shoot the outside shot, James.
Yeah, I mean, over the last 10 games, he's been shooting nearly 38%, 37.8 from behind the arc. So, I mean, there is something there with that, and the ability to stretch the floor. Maybe he can be a specialized player, but if you're going to be specialized like that, with, being that guy, defense would certainly go a long way helping you find a spot on this roster, kind of the way Bruce Bowen did back in the day. He was a defender that had a three-point shot. That was kind of his calling card, and that's what his role was on the team. And I know we're going to get into it, but that's what got his jersey into the rafters, is being that specialized player. So I do think that the defense is something, if you're going to be that kind of player, that's going to need to come with it if you're Julian.
I look at Julian, and my first thought is, here we go again, another Gary Neal, another Bryn Forbes, another Jaren Jackson, that type of player. We've seen this before, James. Yes, but a taller one. But we've seen this before. Shooter comes in, wows for a while, and then they're gone. And you never hear from them again. I hope that doesn't happen to Julian, but that's kind of like my vibe here. Is I feel that, hey, look, if Popovich is still coaching and he's still here, they're gonna, and Julian stays on, they're gonna squeeze every bit of him they can, But I hope it doesn't go that way. But how much would he impact this roster, Julian? That is, if they win the lottery and get Wemby, I think that would help tremendously.
I mean, getting a Wemby win, that's a win regardless of whether he's on the roster or not. But, they're having help defense helps a player. But in a player like Julian's, where you are an end of the roster guy on a bunch of different rosters, like the Spurs in this first stop of being a G League / end of the roster guy. If you're going to be that guy and you're going to make a niche for yourself on an NBA team, you better be better than just one thing. You've got to be extremely good at two things. That was Bruce Bowen. He was really good at that corner three and playing defense. Well, Julian, if you can shoot threes, that's great. That's one thing. I need a second thing out of you, because that's what's going to keep you on an NBA roster. And that's kind of the difference between, those consistent contributors at the end of the bench versus guys that can't help but bounce between the G League and NBA. The difference in them is one thing versus two things. So you've got to hone your craft on one thing, become really good at it, and develop a counter to that, something else, whether that something else is playing defense or being a great passer.
Right.
Or there's got to be something that you can do that will allow a team to basically say, okay, you are worth whatever this liability may be, right?
He is James Pledger with San Antonio Sports Star. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at @IamPledger. When we get back, we're going to continue our chat about Julian. I'm going to ask Pledger a big question: if Julian stays or he's elsewhere next season, right here on Locked On Spurs. Hey, for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right from the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage, look for the green check to know if your part will fit, and guess what? If it doesn't, you get your money back. Just because life is just like sports, confidence is the name of the game. So when you shop on eBay Motors, and with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And I also want to talk to you about our newest sponsor right here on Locked On Spurs, straight from the Alamo City, San Antonio itself. Did you stay up late night watching that end of the Spurs Suns game? You need a pick-me-up? Then you look no further than Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee. Mudslingers is locally owned, independent coffee shop, and they're proud to make delicious coffee for our community. They do it fast and friendly, so you can get on with your day. Whether you're in the mood for a latte cold brew or, James, get ready for this one, Pledger, Red Bull infused lightning bolt. How about that? That sounds pretty intense. They have the drinks for every taste. They also have a wide selection of dairy alternatives, low-calorie options, even caffeine-free drinks for those who want to take it easy. Swing by Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee right now for that tasty, convenient caffeine fix. located at 2404 Thousand Oaks Drive near 281 and 1604. They're open every day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Again, 2404 Thousand Oaks Drive near 281 and 1604. Life is too short for bland coffee. Let's bring him back. He is James Pledger with San Antonio Sports Star. Follow him on Twitter at @IamPledger. We're talking about Julian Champagnie, if he's going to be here or not. And that's what we're going to lead off with, James. I think the Spurs will keep him around. It's just a matter where he's wearing a Austin Spurs jersey or a San Antonio Spurs jersey. James, I'm going to go out there. I think he's probably Austin bound again.
I can see him being here because the Spurs majority of draft equity that they're going to have is in future years. The Spurs just kind of have their own picks this upcoming season, which is fine. So there is a chance I could see him on the roster pretty easily this coming year, but there also is a chance that I cannot, because I can totally see them, once you get a Victor Wembanyama into the building, immediately trying to surround him with, veteran leaders, players that have been there, done that, as you're trying to now fast forward this rebuild to where you've got leaders in the building that can kind of teach and show you the NBA way instead of going full youth like the Rockets. That's kind of been part of their downfall, is the fact that they are so young that there is no veteran leadership to kind of guide the youth along.
Yeah. And, wouldn't be surprised too if they, the two-way contract is there. He's back and forth, spending time in Austin, spending time just going through that path. It's no knock on him. From DeJounte Murray to Derek White to Boban, every Spur has done this path before. So, yeah, I like the kid. 26 points, as you mentioned, in that previous outing versus the Kings. I think that was like a two-way NBA guy record. Like, there's been the most points ever scored by a two-way player. So kudos on him. And, he has NBA experience playing with the 76ers. So that's good. Now he has experience with the Spurs. So you definitely like what you have there. I think everything just depends on this draft, James. If they get the Wemby, that changes everything. This roster is completely different.
Yeah, Wemby's the wild card, because if you get him, I do believe that presses fast forward on your rebuild, and they're going to have cap space. So I do believe that they will be looking to add talent around Wemby, because they're not looking to go, while they will be young and they will keep their guys like Malachi and probably Trey and Sohan and all of them, Keldon, Devin, like those guys are the young guys. Those guys are the nucleus. You're adding Wemby to that, but you're going to want to add people that know what the playoffs are like. You need more than just, let's say, Doug McDermott on this roster to help kind of foster a championship culture in a sense, because let's face it, Doug McDermott's not like he has a ton of playoff experience in his own right.
Right.
So they're going to want to bring in players that will fit and fill that void that is currently on this roster.
I tell you this much though: if the Spurs don't get Wemby and they get Scoot, I mean, I don't think Julian will be here. He's definitely in Austin, because
same. The top two, like if you get either one of the two generational top talents, the guys that one bullet point, two bullet point, that's the order they're going, and after that, it's kind of up in the air. Like, if you're getting one of those two guys, I see the Spurs going heavy fast forward and trying to bring in culture guys to help rebuild this thing. And while youth will be at the forefront, there will be some veteranness behind that youth to help bring them along.
Yeah. You saw that with the Suns. Remember when at one point they were super young with Booker and Ayton. And the couple of the guys they shipped out for Kevin Durant, and then they brought in
Cam Johnson.
Then they brought in CP3, changed everything for them. So you can see that kind of path for the Spurs as well. I think Julian definitely has an NBA career. It's just a matter of it's still in San Antonio at the end of the season, but he's putting his best foot forward. He's knocking down those three shots. He's knocking down the outside shot. He's getting points up. Points are a premium in today's NBA. If you could just tighten up that defense, the Spurs could possibly have another gem on their hands, whether he's in Austin or San Antonio. He is James Pledger with San Antonio Sports Star. Follow him on Twitter at @IamPledger. And when we get back, it's time to tip our cap to LMA. LaMarcus Aldridge has announced his retirement. We're going to look back at his days as a Spur and ask a question that Spurs fans have been asking on social media, is whether his Spurs jersey should be retired. I think we know what James is going to say already. We already know it. So he's probably going to come out of like a cannon out of the break right here on Locked On Spurs. But I want to talk to you about FanDuel. Look, the playoffs are almost here. Now's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point squares to threes drained. You can even include core, bets that you want to make, like the money lines we mentioned, the spread, or player props like player points, rebounds, assists, even exclusive bets like 2x3, 2 3-pointers scored in the first 3 minutes. Yeah, you can have a lot of fun with the FanDuel. FanDuel lets you combine your bets for a bigger chance at a payout, and that being a bigger payout with same game parlay. Don't miss your chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Autobots, roll out.
We're back right here on Locked On Spurs with James Pledger. He is with San Antonio Sports Star, co-host of the Saturday Morning Hangover, and the only guy I know who can drive and podcast, pace and podcast, work and podcast. How do you do it, James?
There was something broken in me a long time ago to where my attention goes in a bunch of different directions at once, and I've just found a way to capitalize off that.
It's working. It's working. It's definitely working.
I turned my deficiency into a strength.
Exactly. Time to just give a little salute, shout out to LMA, LaMarcus Aldridge. He recently announced he's retiring from basketball.
Again.
And And he spent some time in San Antonio. Will go down as of now as the best free agent pickup the Spurs have ever made. Big name, that is. And he chose San Antonio. So kudos to him. Did his best to get the Spurs into a deep playoff run. Almost did it a couple times, but nevertheless, he was supposedly the next after Tim Duncan, the next big. Didn't really shape out that way. But you look back at his Spurs career, it started off rocky because remember, he wanted out pretty fast.
Yeah, he wanted out pretty fast, but you talk about LaMarcus Aldridge, and the first thing that comes to mind, like I always think about this. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about somebody? Because there's been this debate on Sports Star about whether Powell is a Spur. Like, yeah, he's a Spur, but he's a Laker. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Pau Gasol? It's a Laker. He has jersey retired there a couple weeks before he was announced. Like, he is a Laker who spent time as a Spur. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of LaMarcus Aldridge?
Yeah, Portland.
There are two things that come to mind. It is Portland, and he chose us. And I don't think he's given enough respect for that. He is the first big-ticket free agent that chose San Antonio. Now, it was rocky early, and he won it out, and there was this division between his team, Kawhi's team, what direction was this team going, et cetera, et cetera. But I will say this, if not for a poorly placed Zaza foot, LaMarcus might have a title in San Antonio.
Yep, he might have.
Because that team was playing extremely well. If you remember, during that season, at one point, they were undefeated at home, and there was talk about whether they should try for the undefeated home record or not. They were playing extremely well. They had Golden State, who was the eventual champion, on the ropes early. And then everything changed with one step on the court. Yep. And it sucks because maybe LaMarcus's time here is remembered differently if they win that title. I don't know if things change with Kawhi or not. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But in terms of just the feeling around LaMarcus Aldridge, because it is very polarizing. There is the, he never lived up to what he was supposed to be here. He was supposed to be the bridge past Duncan, yada, yada, yada. And then there's my crowd, he chose us. He's the biggest name free agent we ever had. Like, I appreciate everything he did here. So there's a differing, divulging group, but as far as his jersey being, it already is. 12's up there, man.
Yeah, 12's pretty up there. Yeah, he was just borrowing it from Bruce, and Bruce told him it's okay. But when I look back at LMA's time, I think of a lot of the great moments. Remember his 50 plus outing against it was in San Antonio. They dumped water on him during his interview. His playoff performances. He was just willing the team sometimes in the playoffs versus OKC. The best one where he was just on, and it just felt like bad timing with him. He could, you're right. I think he could have won a title in that last season with Kawhi, healthy Kawhi against the Warriors. But it just seems like everything was a miss. He came in at the tail end of the Big Three era. He had a lot of expectations on him. Because you're following Tim Duncan. Man, that's just tough to do. Then you got the Kawhi mess. Kawhi gets injured. And then even before Kawhi became Kawhi, really was taking the mantle. It was all LMA. Did he really have help though? Was there really any help around him? It always felt like he was just, Kawhi wasn't there yet. He was good, but he wasn't the Kawhi Leonard as we know now. It wasn't until that break.
Was like Kawhi was Kawhi in those final few seasons. Like I assert the Kawhi that we all know, the max guy Kawhi, as I like to call him. After that series against the Heat, Kawhi kind of announced himself. That's when we knew he's the next. And he was becoming the next. And every year he was better and better and better. And he was getting in on MVP and All-NBA discussions already. So I don't buy into the fact that, he wasn't Kawhi. Yes, he was. Kawhi was Kawhi as soon as that title happened in 14. Like, he was that good. He was a game changer. He was an MVP at that point. He was a max guy. Like, the Spurs maxed him out after that. So I don't put stock in he didn't become the Kawhi, because really since he's left, Kawhi hadn't been Kawhi. Like, we saw the best of Kawhi in San Antonio, if we really want to be honest about ourselves, except for that brief half a season in Toronto where he willed the Raptors to a title.
Do you think that also was just, again, part of the bad timing with LMA, because he comes in thinking that he's the next guy in San Antonio, and then there's this guy Kawhi Leonard, he's emerging. So
no,
he emerged
because
fast.
I think it was always supposed to be a 1 and 1A with those two. Like, we know how the NBA works. We had the big three. There were three guys. Like, everything was about having three at that point in time. And at that point, you did have Kawhi, who was, on the verge of being an MVP. You had a perennial all-star in LaMarcus Aldridge, and the biggest free agent we had ever had at that point. And you still had a very advanced age Tim Duncan, who was on the verge of retirement but hadn't yet, right?
Right.
He was going to be kind of the bridge between LaMarcus and Tim was going to walk away in the middle of that. And you still had Manu. Advanced age, but Manu is Manu. So it's one of those things where I do see, he did have the talent around him for a shining moment.
Yeah, and look, his final season in San Antonio, it was in a mutual agreement. I still think the Spurs messed up. They should have traded him to get something, but that didn't go that way. They bought him out. He goes to Brooklyn, and then, by the way, everybody, this is not his first retirement. This is his second. So, but nevertheless, again, he had those health scares during his time in San Antonio, kept him out of several games. But you always looked at him and a good professional. He made waves a little bit at the beginning of his NBA time in San Antonio, but after that was, calm. I mean, where does he rank now among Spurs bigs? Is he
Bigs?
top 5? Yeah, among the bigs. Is he top 5, top 10?
Amongst bigs? Yeah, I mean, it's Tim, it's David, and he's right there. He's next, probably, if you're talking about Spurs bigs.
Yeah.
There it's not like there's a lot of big ones. And so, you can argue he's in the top 10 of Spurs talent all time.
Interesting. Yeah. It's going to be interesting how he'll be remembered. Obviously he's going to be remembered obviously for his time as a Blazer. That's a given. Yeah. That's where he
But
made
he
his
should
name.
be remembered for what he did in San Antonio, because
Exactly.
he kept this from being where
Became
we
an
are
all-star.
right now.
Yeah. He became an all-star in San Antonio. So
he kept this franchise relevant for a handful of years while he was here.
Yeah.
And kept them at least in the conversation, keeping that playoff streak alive to where they could get to that record.
Mm-hmm. So congratulations to LaMarcus Aldridge. Good memories in San Antonio, and hopefully he takes care of himself. I know he has those health issues, James, but yeah, it's fortunate. Many greats don't exit out. They exit out without a title. So, you think he's Hall of Fame bound though?
Oh yeah, Hall of Fame, yes.
Okay.
Whether Spurs jersey in the rafters, probably not. Like, I could see it in Portland, I can't see it here.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been well documented as saying that I think there are too many jerseys up there as it is right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's too many up there. A few of those have to come down. But no, unfortunately, I don't think LMA's jersey will get retired at the AT&T. But nevertheless,
I mean, do you put a hyphen on the one that's up there? Do you, like, how would you do that? Because you don't put 2 12s, which is why I've always been a proponent of Ring of Honors, not jersey retirements.
Yeah, I can see that.
Put a guy's name around the facade of the interior and create a Ring of Honor, because jersey retirements, like, there are so few jerseys. And if you ever become something as great as, like, say, the Lakers or the Celtics, like, you start running out of numbers. The Yankees, like, these are teams that can't do that.
Yeah.
So
exactly,
I've always been more of a proponent of, this jersey is reserved, like 88 in the Dallas Cowboys. You better be a damn good wide receiver to wear 88, right?
Wear that, yeah.
Exactly. Those are, like, very sparingly given out, but their names are in a Ring of Honor around the interior of the stadium, and I believe that is the best way to actually honor players, to where you're not worried about things like what we have with LaMarcus, where you get a guy that wears 12 and he's a huge name, and then you've got a guy in the rafters, which, should he be? I don't know. Ring of Honor would be great in that instance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. The Cowboys you mentioned, they do that, and I can't think of an NBA team that does that now. Can you? I don't think an NBA team. I want to say,
do you think Jordan would allow his 23 to come down out of the Heat's rafters?
No. No, not at all. Not at all.
Because that's another funny thing is when you see like Miami, who retired Michael Jordan's number, who never played for them.
He is James Pledger with San Antonio Sports Star. Follow him on Twitter at @IamPledger. We need you to brag about the Star. What you got cooking over there?
Oh, we got it all cooking. It starts early with R&R from 6 to 10. And then, of course, Jimenez and Spence, we get you going with me producing from noon to 3. And then, of course, the Blitz with Jason Minix and Joe Ryan-Eagle with me producing as well. We'll take you home from 3 to 7. And after that, usually baseball games. We've had the NCAA tournament on. The Rangers are kicking up. We've got NFL football throughout the year. Everything you want. From a play-by-play perspective. And, of course, on the weekends, it's me, Jack Thompson, Katie Goodman, on the Saturday Morning Hangover, Saturday mornings, 9 to 11.
Am I reading this correctly? Is Ryan-Eagle not on board with Wemby? I see a lot of his tweets. He tends to throw a little shade at him a lot.
He does, but I think it's more because he just hates the idea of tanking for an unknown quantity. more so than anything. Like he can't wrap his brain around that. And there are a bunch of people like Joe Ryan-Engel that can't do this. But if you're starting a business and the government's offering you a $20,000 starter loan at a fixed low interest rate, would you not take that?
You take
because
it
it
right
gives your
away.
business the best chance to succeed.
Absolutely.
So why would you not take the 14% odds to get one of the most generational possible talents coming out since LeBron James and before that Tim Duncan? Like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
At least
exactly.
give yourself a chance.
A chance. Yeah. And even if you don't get the big prize, you're still going to get a really good prize following him.
It's not a guarantee, but it's put yourself in the best possible position for success moving forward.
And
which is all you can ask for.
And did you see that report from Draft Express that an anonymous NBA GM said that they wished that they would have tanked? That they said they're flat out at this point they wish they were tanked to set themselves in position.
There are teams that aren't in the play-in, that are in the playoffs but don't have a chance of winning, that wish they would have tanked.
Yeah. He's that good.
He is that big. Like, we are paying attention to French basketball right now.
The NBA is playing his games on League Pass and whatnot.
Can you imagine what that would do for a market like San Antonio to have someone with that kind of cachet to where
it'll be immediate.
Like, you know how we haven't had nationally televised games over the past 3-4 years, and we always complained about the lack of national televised games when we had the big three playing at their best? You wouldn't have that issue with Victor Wembanyama because people are dying to see more of him.
Yeah, he's the grand prize, and of course the Star and Locked On Spurs will have it covered for you should the Spurs win that day. Still a few months away, but nevertheless, we'll have it here for you. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Second, let's check out Locked On Game to Game. Every result, every recap, everything you need to know about the NBA. Locked On Game to Game, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, just like Locked On Spurs, YouTube, Odyssey app, iTunes, and the Ken 5 Plus app. He is James Pledger, hard at work. We got to let him go. He has producing to do. So for James Pledger, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put on a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.